He was a slaveholder himself. He was the last president to actually bring slaves to the White House. But they were generally kept upstairs because by this point it was starting to be controversial for a president to even have slaves. Now, he was a Southerner who had used slave labor, but he was seeing that this whole slavery issue was becoming more and more of a hot topic. He wanted to admit new states into the Union, like California was nearing when it would enter, Texas, other parts out west. And with each new state that could enter the Union, there was this question. Would it be admitted as a slave state, which Southerners wanted, or as a free state, which Northerners wanted? Now, Southerners were concerned if states were admitted that weren't slave states, there would end up being a majority of free states in Congress, and that would mean that their rights in the South, with their slaves, would eventually be rescinded. And they were concerned that they wouldn't be able to continue the plantations and the farming that they needed to do without that labor on which they'd relied so many years. Now, despite being a Southerner, he gained the animosity of the Southern states by encouraging these new territories, rather than joining his territories like the Indiana Territory had or the Louisiana Territory, he encouraged them to try to join as states right away and to decide themselves about whether they wanted to be slave or free. And this did not go over well with the Southern states. And there already were these rumblings and these rumors of the South wanting to break away. And he said, if you try to break away from the Union, I will bring in the militia, I'll bring in the army to fight to keep this nation together. So that was a strong statement he made, a bit of a foreshadow of the Civil War. Although he was generally in favor of peace, he was even more in favor of the Union. He believed that the Union needed to be strong, and that was stronger than any loyalty to the South, which he had, although he was connected to 4 Southern states. Another decisive action which he made was passing a treaty which led to slowing down the concept of manifest destiny. That was a popular idea in the 1840s, namely that the United States had the right and that it was the divine destiny of this country to contain basically all the land in North America. That it was this idea which really motivated the westward expansion, the pioneers going to these new territories on the frontier, the idea that the American way of life deserved to be spread all throughout these regions. He wasn't necessarily against that, and of course he had fought in many of these territories, but he did calm that down a little with the one treaty he passed. Sadly, Zachary Taylor never got to resolve the issue of California's statehood or see through further activity with the annexation of Texas or get closer to the Civil War, because he only served 16 months in office. On July 4th, 1850, he was at a 4th of July celebration, and supposedly he had copious amounts of cherries and iced milk. It's not clear whether this led to the fact that shortly after he developed a severe gastrointestinal complaint. At first it didn't seem that serious. He was able to work the first day. But then it grew more and more painful for him and he became very sick. His family gathered around him before he eventually died on July 9th, 1850, after only 16 months in office. He was given great honor with his funeral, and his vice president, Millard Fillmore, took over as the president, following in the footsteps of John Tyler, who became 10th president after William Henry Harrison, the 9th president, died after just 1 month in office. And this was a relatively short period of time in which 2 presidents died in office and not from any kind of violent assassination. Or so they said. As soon as Zachary Taylor died, there were rumors that he had been assassinated. Some people felt it was by Southerners who didn't like his stance on slavery. Some said it was by some Catholic forces which were against him for some reason. I know he was Episcopalian. I wasn't quite able to figure out why they would want him to be killed, but perhaps there was something in his legislature.